And a very good morning once again. Behind the scenes interview time here on the Farm Hour over 104.5 WQKT. Our guest in studio this morning, our good friend from the OSU Extension Office here in Wayne County. And that, of course, is Rory Lewandowski. Rory, as always, a very good morning. Glad to have you joining us again here today.
Thanks, Ron. Glad to be here.
Well, as we begin 2018, the general outlook for the farm economy, as most know, not quite as rosy as you'd want. And that's going to lead us into our topic today, farm financial management. It's very pertinent this year and really every year. Briefly, can you set the stage for our discussion today? Maybe define why this is an important topic here at the start of the year and what it involves as far as our purposes go.
Right. Well, I think it's important to know that farming is really so much more than just physical labor. Now, certainly working hard, in today's environment does not necessarily guarantee success or profitability. You could be working hard at doing the wrong things. So I think of farm financial management as providing information that allows the farm owner or operator to make decisions that will improve farm profitability and to plan and perform purposeful activity or work that benefits that farm's bottom line. So in order to do this, the farm owner, operator, and members of that management team really need to understand how to develop and then use core financial documents.
Core financial documents. Rory, you often hear business people talk about balance sheets. So I'd imagine that, that might be one of those core financial documents for a farm business as well. But what are some of the other financial documents that you're talking about, and what kind of information, goes on those documents?
Right. Well, you're right. The balance sheet is one of those core financial documents. The balance sheet really provides a snapshot of what the farm business owns as well as what it owes. The result then is a picture of that farm's net worth. Then there are really three other core financial documents. One is an income statement. That provides a picture of the net income or loss of the farm from the last year or the past year. The second is a cash flow statement or a projection. That provides a picture of where cash is used monthly in the farm operation. And then the third would be a cost of production analysis. That provides information to help farms determine their competitiveness in the market for each farm enterprise.
On today's program, we want to focus on the farm balance sheet. You mentioned that the balance sheet provides a picture of the farm's net worth. Talk about the information needed, to put together a good balance sheet.
Okay. Well, a balance sheet consists of your assets, liabilities, and equity. So assets, those are the things you own. That would include things like your checkbook balance, cash, tractors, equipment, machinery, cattle, buildings, and land. You need to assign a realistic and conservative value to each of those assets. Then liabilities are the money that you owe, your debts. Things could be like a feed bill, a vet bill. Maybe it's an operating loan, a mortgage payment that you have for land. It could be a loan for a new milking parlor that you've put up, or renovation to that parlor. Might be a loan for some piece of equipment or machinery. You start by sitting down, making a list, but then I also encourage folks to get out and walk around the farm with that balance sheet in mind. You might be surprised at what you've missed as you look around the farm. Next, then, you're going to subtract your total liabilities from your total assets, and equity is what you have left over. That equity figure helps you to understand how much you're using debt or how much you're using loans to pay for those assets.
As I think about a farm business, even a small farm, there's always lots of stuff that are assets. I mean, you can't go to a farm without running into, piles and piles of machinery. And certainly everybody listening to this knows that all loans are not the same. Some have to be paid off quicker than others. Interest rates obviously can vary. So this, like most things, can get complicated. Are there forms available to help put together a balance sheet, or maybe recommendations on how to organize something like this?
Yeah, you bring up some very good points here. So the short answer is yes. There are balance sheet forms that are available to help farmers think through possible assets and liabilities on their farm and to get that organized. I can certainly provide examples and copies of different forms through our Wayne County Extension Office, so that's a resource. Oftentimes lenders will have balance sheet forms available as well. But most balance sheets are going to organize assets and liabilities as either current, intermediate, or long-term. So, an example, a current debt is one that has to be paid off within the next 12 months. A current asset, then, on the other hand, is one that can be or will be converted into cash within that next 12 months or next year, or it's going to be used up within the 12 months. So some examples might be, again, cash in your checkbook account. Could be a bin full of grain. It could be milking parlor supplies like teat dip. Then your intermediate assets and debts, they have a longer lifespan. These are items that last greater than 1, but usually less than 10 years. And they would include, on the asset side, things like tractors, machinery, equipment. On the liability side, it's that debt incurred then to pay for them. You might have a loan that's due over a 7-year period, for example. Finally, we have long-term debts and assets. They last over 10 years. So example might be a land contract where you're paying off on a debt, a long-term mortgage. That's a long-term debt. The land and buildings are long-term types of assets.
Rory Lewandowski, our guest in studio today, joining us from the OSU Extension Office. Rory, since we're talking about this at the beginning of the year, I assume that this would be a good time to put together a balance sheet. Better start at the beginning than rather try to figure it out halfway through. Talk a little bit about the timing in putting a balance sheet together.
Right, you're right on that, Ron. A balance sheet should be put together at least once a year, and a good time really is the beginning of the year. As you said, if I'm trying to put together a beginning of the year balance sheet and I've waited till May or June, it gets hard to remember what did I have on hand in inventory at that time. So beginning of the year is traditionally a time that's recommended. Any farm that's involved in any kind of comprehensive financial analysis typically is going to put together a beginning balance sheet in January, usually dated kind of January 1, and then an ending balance sheet dated kind of December 31st. That way you can make comparisons between balance sheets over a period of years. If you keep that kind of record, you can then track to see, is that farm business growing or is it declining? And then what percentage of that farm business is truly owned by the farm when you look at your debt. In addition, we have some financial ratios that can be calculated and compared to farm financial benchmarks. They're used then to assess the health of your farm business.
Rory, what are the financial ratios that can be calculated from a balance sheet, and what kind of financial health questions, would they answer?
Well, there are 5 ratios really that we use and can be calculated from a balance sheet. One of the important ones is the current ratio and the working capital. They both help to answer the question of, can the farm meet current debt obligations and payments? So within the past couple of years, we've heard a lot more about the importance of working capital. That's essentially cash reserves as a measure of farm financial health. So working capital of 25% or more as a percentage of your gross farm revenue is generally considered desirable. There are 3 other ratios that can be calculated from the balance sheet's number, and they answer the question of solvency. In other words, can the farm business pay off all its debt if it were to be sold tomorrow? Solvency measures are used to evaluate the financial risk of the farm business, and also gives you an idea of the potential borrowing capacity. Those specific ratios are the farm debt to asset ratio, farm equity to asset ratio, and then the farm debt to equity ratio. So we often hear about that farm debt to asset ratio. That indicates really what share of the farm business is owned by the bank, or in other words, what share of the farm business do you own free and clear. Another way the balance sheet is used by dairy farms specifically is to calculate a debt per cow number, and that's arrived at, you take your total farm debt, divide it by your number of lactating plus dry cows on the farm to get that figure. So that again is used by dairy farms looking at a debt per cow number.
As always, a lot of good financial information contained in a farm balance sheet if it's put together accurately, and big ifs, if those financial management ratios are calculated then used. On our next program, we're going to discuss farm income and cash flow statements. Meanwhile, if someone wants more information about balance sheets, Rory, let everybody know how they can get that. Also, a new feature as far as our interviews go. Those are going to be now posted on your website. Let people know how they can find those.
Right, exactly. So for information on balance sheets and financial statements, contact me at the Wayne County Extension Office at 330-264-8722. And as you mentioned, you're graciously providing the files for these interviews that we're doing, and we're going to post them on our OSU Extension website at wayne.osu.edu, and then click on that Agriculture and Natural Resources tab.
All right, once again, Rory Lewandowski from the OSU Extension Office, our guest again in studio here on the Farm Hour. We'll